Appamada and its programs are supported by your generosity, and your generosity and support makes such a difference. You can find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. It's good to see you. First of all, I'd like to say welcome also to our other Sanghas in Madison, England, Switzerland, Chicago, Hawaii, Alpine. I think that's everybody. And everybody in between that usually is here or listens in from other parts. Welcome, welcome to everyone. Before I start, I'd like to go over some announcements. Excuse me. One is that on the 23rd of this month, we're having the Jiso ceremony. That will be led by Joel. And I think he's still in the organizing part of it. So stay tuned for the details of that event. I think it's going to be really fun this year. I'll say that much. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Also, there's the 3-day intensive on June 4th to June 6th. And Peg will be leading that with one of the other teachers. Flint, I don't think will be here for that. But Peg will. Actually, she's going to be in person, I believe, here. Is that right? No? She's not going to be here. I lied. So anyway, the details will be coming out on that soon. So stay tuned. And also on the 6th, we're having the exit ceremony for our current head student, Kim Mosley. So that I know will be at 2:00. So stay tuned for that too. Please come. It'll be Zoom, of course, but those are just lovely ceremonies. And Kim has worked so hard and on his koan all this time, and that's going to be a fun event too. So that's June the 6th. Also, Kim is still leading teas, I presume. So you can sign up with him online to meet with him for a tea. And it's really special because his wife does the tea ceremony. She does a mini version. It's so lovely to see. It's amazing. So I recommend, if you haven't done that already, see Kim. It'll be a fun discussion. Lastly, I'll just say that discussions are being held now about opening the Zendo. It won't be anytime really soon, but it'll be, anyway, it's being discussed by the board and how it will happen and so forth. So that's really exciting to even be talking about it after so long, well over a year. So stay tuned for the announcements on that one too. So to begin the beginning, today I would like to discuss a Dharma talk that was given by Suzuki Roshi at the Austin Zen Center. And it's another one that's published in his book, Not Always So. And the name of it is The Teaching Just for You. I'll also give some commentary on this as we go along. So my title for this talk is Buddha's Teaching is for Everyone. Buddha's teaching is just for me. Two sides of the practice coin. Oh, I meant San Francisco Zen Center. Thank you, Kim. Suzuki Roshi is at San Francisco. Okay. So when we think of practice, we think we expect something out of it, right? We generally do. All right. So in practice, we expect to get something out of it. We expect something. And so we think if we try hard, we'll have some improvement in our practice. And we think that if we set a goal, that we'll eventually reach it. And we even might think that day by day practice will lead to some physical and mental conditioning. So all of that is probably true. However, it's not the whole story. This is not a whole understanding. So we do Zazen. Well, Suzuki Roshi says we don't do Zazen, Zazen does us. But at any rate, with the understanding that the goal is not going to be reached in 1 or 2 years, but rather practice, the goal is right now. We're working with right now. We're not thinking of what we'll get in 1 to 2 years. It's right now. Our practice is what we're dealing with right now on the cushion. Whoops. So, by practicing in this way, immediately, it takes care of many things. You remain concentrated, and you're completely involved with your practice, the practice that you have right now. So there's a lot of instructions that are given, as far as our breath and how we sit, that kind of thing. So you can practice hard enough to feel the goal of practice right now. It's interesting that he uses that word, to feel. Anyway, to feel the goal of the practice right now. So you might say, well, my practice is not good enough for me to feel the goal of practice right now. And even though you say that your practice is not good, your practice, this is your practice. It is where you are right here, right now, and that's what you're going to practice with. It doesn't matter what you think about it. Even if you might think it's great, okay, but you're still practicing with what what you have right now, today, at this moment, good or bad. There isn't anything other than what you have right now. So part of approaching, or maybe all of approaching perfect practice, if there is such a thing, which is to accept yourself. And in terms of this idea of good or bad practice. Because these thoughts that we have about good or bad are not really helpful. They're just some ideas about it. It's just talking about it. Now, by saying that your practice is perfect, given that you're practicing with what you have right now, some people can misunderstand that, and they'll think about it in a purely objective way, and they might use it as some sort of excuse. Okay, well, if we're sitting in the Zendo, which of course we're not, if we're sitting in Zoom, if we're sitting, and that's perfect practice, right? So we don't really have to, if we just sit a little bit, we don't, that's good. That's enough. We don't have to stay more than one period, or we don't have to do long sits, sessions or what have you, because we have a perfect practice. And of course, this is the wrong understanding. of the perfect practice. This understanding is totally superficial. And most importantly, according to Suzuki Roshi, is it doesn't take into consideration the subjective side of practice, the subjective side. Okay, so what is he talking about here? He says truth is always here. So saying it is so, or saying that something is the truth, like this comment about just sitting one period or not worrying about sitting longer than that and improving your practice because it's perfect, is not practicing with the truth. And so it's not Zazen. He also says when we practice when we're not practicing the truth, this must be a Chinese phrase or Japanese phrase, I'm sorry. It's too bad Nancy's not here. We could ask her. But he says that it's like eating painted cake, or that, and this painted cake means actually it's something that you can't really eat. It has no value. It has no result. And so that's what he says, not being truthful in our practice or about our practice. So if what you're being fed has no taste, you'll end up giving up, just going away, because it doesn't mean anything. The practice doesn't mean anything. It provides no results. So it's better to go somewhere else where you can, rather than eat what's offered at the Zen Center. Another pitfall he mentions is sometimes, I guess this is probably with new students, when somebody calls them a Zen student, they feel kind of proud. Oh, now I'm a Zen student. But Suzuki Roshi says that's what's going on there, is you're really encouraging the ego when you're focusing in that way. And that's not practicing Zen. So when you sit like that, Zen doesn't mean anything. True Zen cannot be like that. If it were, he says, that Zen would have disappeared a long, long time ago. In reality, Zen is alive. It's alive because of the other side of the truth, the subjective side. So I'm going to throw something in here just so, and you can comment what you think about this, so my sense about this objective versus subjective, the objective practice is one that is involved with the forms and the structure, the rules. That's the objective side. And the subjective is more what your approach to it or what you bring to it. It's more the personal aspect of your practice. We'll hear what he says more and see if that fits. So he says that various sages and ancestors have said that the Buddha left this teaching for me, not for anyone else. That's kind of funny. So what does that mean? Apparently, this teaching seems very personal to them, a teaching that truly speaks to them. For example, Nichiren, who's a 13th century Japanese priest and philosopher, declared that the Lotus Sutra alone contains the highest truth of Buddha's teachings. And he insisted that the sovereign of Japan support only this form of Buddhism, and the rest of them should be eradicated. He's a very passionate guy. So, the Buddha, in his mind, the Buddha left the Lotus Sutra just for Nichiren. So, if this side is forgotten, this side of the truth is forgotten, the Buddha's teaching is nothing but it's just paper to throw in the trash. It's meaningless. So you say, well, gee whiz, if I say the teachings are just for me, what's that about? Isn't that arrogance? And Suzuki Roshi says, no, it's not. Rather, what it means is that you have full appreciation of the teaching as your own. And he goes on to say, I am one being. No one can take my position. I can't fool myself. I am one being. No one can take my position. It says position. I wonder if the meaning is really place. No one can take my place. Maybe that's the same. Anyway, the way I understand this, way I'm understanding it at this point, that this attitude is much like the idea of the development of someone like a musician. You know, you start out and you have you start by learning the scales and the fingering and the basics of music, right? And you finally learn how to play a few songs, and you go on and you study and study, and at some point you get really good, and some people, you know, get really great, fantastic musicians. And so there many times they are playing music from centuries ago, right? Classical music. And what are they doing? This is the music, as I see it, flows through them in such a way that, and it comes out, it's the same piece, but it has their flavor. There is no way to do a kind of music, right? There's subtleties of speed and volume and so forth, just little ways that you play it. So I look at it like that with these teachings. The teachings are for everyone, but they're also for us to practice with, and they can really be very moving for us, and it ends up, they move right through us, and we can, you know, we present it to the rest of the world. So just as the Buddha's teachings, the Dharma flows through individuals when they make it their own, it flows through the person reflecting their own style or flavor. That, Suzuki Roshi says, is the spirit we need in our Zazen practice. Everyone can be Nichiren. Everyone can be Dogen. Everyone can be Buddha Dharma. Because I practice Zazen, there is Buddha, there is Dogen or Bodhidharma, and there is Buddha's teaching. So it's like these teachings live through us, right? It's a way to keep the teachings alive is through our practice of them. So he says, you realize you are the only being in the world, and no one can take over your position or place. That is true. All the teaching is just for you. All the teaching is just for you. So no one can take over my position or place, so I must not fool myself. So these are very important points for those who practice the way, our way, Zen. Without this kind of confidence and understanding, You will expose the weakness of your practice, which can show up as, oh no, I'm not good enough. Look at me, I can't practice Zazen. Zazen is so beautiful and so perfect, but impossible for me to do the practice. So in that, you'll feel the weakness of your character and your conduct, and you're so preoccupied in this way, you'll be unable to sit. This teaching is for me. Whatever you say about yourself, you will be the only one. You cannot escape because the whole world is yours. This is beyond truth that we can talk about. He says this is ultimate truth that we're talking about here. Because, how can you deny the fact that you are the only one? You can criticize yourself, and that's relatively easy, right? But when you accept the fact that you are the only one, you have no time to say good practice, bad practice. But because we turn a deaf ear to this truth, we have time to criticize ourselves. When you realize this point, you can hear or see the truth, and then you can practice Zazen. You accept the truth, whatever it is, good or bad. To practice is to open, this is an important point, to practice is to open yourself up to everything you see as an embodiment of the truth. Embodiment of the truth. This is why we practice Zazen, and this is why everyone can join our practice, and why this practice includes every activity of our life. So this is a little bit of my own commentary. So it's like we are the only ones, or you are the only ones, I'm the only one that can do this. No one can take your place. No one can do the practice for you. You are the only one who can actualize your Buddha nature. So what are you waiting for? So it's not a practice that can be compared to other practices as a means to attain something. We have these instructions that were accumulated from the experiences of many people. And from these, we have the forms we use, just like scientific knowledge is accumulated in a similar way. But Buddhist wisdom puts emphasis on the subjective side of truth. And that is why we say everyone is Buddha. That is how we transmit Buddha's teaching to everyone. It is not just paper transmission, it's warm hand to warm hand. And it's through the particular Buddha's teaching is transmitted, right? The subjective side has always been with us, and the point has always been emphasized without losing the objective side of the truth. There's both. As I said before, objective is the forms, the instructions. The subjective is Buddha's teaching is for me only. The subjective is being actualized through the particular. Some people who call themselves spiritual, this is according to Suzuki Roshi, ignore the objective side. And Suzuki Roshi says this is a mistake. But he says that being caught in the objective side and ignoring the subjective side But relying on this objective side with an idle attitude just doesn't help. Doesn't help your practice. So only when each of us feels the truth, appreciates, accepts, and is ready to follow the truth, will it work. So when someone puts himself outside the truth in order to study the truth, that's going to be a problem, right? He's not going to know what to do when something happens to him. Suzuki Roshi mentions a story, a Chinese story about a guy who greatly admired dragons. So he had a lot of dragon paraphernalia. You know, he would make things out of paper or what have you. He had little statues and things, all dragons everywhere. And so a dragon was watching him and saying, he really likes dragons. So maybe I should go visit him. So as the dragon goes down and sees him, and of course the guy is just terrified. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know whether to fall on the ground or jump up and down or what. He's not liking it. So Suzuki Roshi says we should be the dragon ourselves. And this man should have been the dragon himself. Then he will not be afraid of them. Be the dragon instead of the admiration from afar. So now we're ready to study our way objectively and subjectively. So practicing in this way, Zazen will become your own Zazen. And as you are Buddha, you will express your true nature in various ways. I just love that. Yeah. This is like the true you comes out in all sorts of ways when you are you. And that is freedom from the forms of practice. Whatever you do, you will really be you. You will be Buddha in its true sense. So there's a big difference between practicing with understanding and practicing with a lazy practice, with poor superficial understanding, like he mentioned at the beginning, of just form, instruction, and teaching. After all, Buddha said, there is no one you can really rely on. So you should be the boss of everything. Then you will understand Buddha's teaching and our practice as your own. So that's the Dharma Talk. So unless there's any questions, I have an activity for us to do. I don't know how many we are. How many are we?
We're 8.
Oh, so we're a really small group. Well, still, it might be nice to get together in little groups. Maybe we could do 4 groups of 2, and then we're at 10:33. Let's say 10:35, and then we want to come back for enough time to finish up the rest of the ceremony here. So let's come back at 10 till. So that will be 15 minutes. That's probably enough. And so here's what the activity is. So we may want to put this in the chat, or people can take notes. So the idea is to engage with each other around this topic of objective and subjective practice. And the questions are, at what point does activity become your own, as in art or music or writing or some other self-expression? That's the first question. Oh, there's Effie. Hi, Effie. I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you. Okay, so at what point does activity become your own, as in some sort of art, music, writing, or other self-expression? And who or what is expressing itself? And how do you know that? How do you know if something is coming from Buddha nature or from the ego, for example? And lastly, I'm just throwing in something just for fun. That's what part does presence play, if any, in all of this? And of course, if you want to talk about your practice too, that's great in terms of your own practice. That's wonderful as well. Well, does anybody have any comments or anything they want to share?
I wanted to talk since I didn't get to talk to anybody.
Good.
Go ahead. Fire.
So I just used the time and I wrote,
Well, good for you.
Great.
instead of talking to someone. And this was a really impactful for me. I want to thank you, Laurie, for bringing this up. This practice is just for you. And so I'll just kind of read you what I wrote.
Great.
The first question was at what point does the activity become your own? It becomes my own when I allow myself to be fully present. What is out there, and it includes me in all my parts. For example, with Zazen this past week or so, I've been really frustrated with myself because I've been very distracted, and even during time that I wasn't sitting, I've been having some recurring ruminating thoughts. And my approach at first was like, okay, I need to be able to sit without so much distraction. And, it's that feeling of not being a good Zen student. And so I was so relating to what you were saying about that. And it did make me start feeling like pulling away from sitting, like this isn't for me right now. I'm not good enough at it. But I did bring myself back. And I think that's why we have the structures. I brought myself back to it. And I just made space for sitting because I remembered the teaching. Okay. And I made space for sitting with all of it and, the ruminating, but like in a more expanded space or something.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what's all's going to happen, but I will say this ruminating is continuing. It didn't make it go away, but it has a different flavor now. It's like I'm saying, okay, it has some information for me. That's why it keeps returning. And so I'm paying attention. And I've seen one small sort of change in an appropriate action around it. So anyway, so I was thinking about what you said, and I think it's present and embodied. That's when it becomes my own. The practice becomes alive when lived through you. And then the just for me translates into for everyone, because obviously everyone's then impacted by that.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing it. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
That was no accident.
Yeah. You're supposed to be by yourself and write it out.
Writing it, yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we better get to the program unless anybody's dying to say something. Otherwise, we'll be overtime. We'll probably be overtime a little bit anyway. So I'll head over here so we can finish up. Oi.